Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and today we are going to be doing a little sewing video where I make the m6979, or maybe it's m7969. I think the latter is actually correct, but that is basically the cottage core dress of our dreams this summer. So I purchased the pattern online. It is a big 4 pattern, which means this took me forever to figure out, but when somebody says big 4 pattern, they're talking about like the big companies who have their patterns like in the craft store, like McCall's, Vogue, and I don't tend to sew their clothes very often unless it's something that becomes like iconic in the sewing community, which the m7969 definitely did get pretty iconic, and it is a McCall's pattern. So yeah, I've already made one before. Actually, I made a TikTok of it because it was actually my first time ever sewing the pattern. It was my first time ever even sewing something like that, so I kind of wanted to like not film it. I actually almost didn't film this one. I got so far as to like cut everything out, and then I was like, wait a minute, I should probably film this. So if you'll forgive me, everything's already cut out, but that part's always boring to watch anyway. So let me do a little pattern piece tour and show you what we're working with. This is the bodice. Okay, so we have one top right here, one side of the top. We have the back in the middle. This is terrible. And then the other side right over here. Okay, so you can kind of see how that's going. There's a big gap in the middle because this pattern features big puffy sleeves, which I love the puffy sleeve thing. I realize that I don't have a ton of clothes that really feel like me right now, and I love the puffy sleeve, so I decided I'm gonna make another puffy sleeve dress. So with it being gingham, I was a little bit more cognizant of trying to pattern match, which I don't usually care about, but gingham, it's a little bit more obvious when you botch a pattern, what is it called? Pattern matching. So I tried to pin things so that it would at least line up with the lines. So I did that on the bodice, you can see, and then I also did that on the skirt. So the skirt is like a pretty full gathered skirt, which gathered skirts are so easy. Definitely one of the first things that I ever felt super confident doing. And so you can see I just pattern matched that right up. And then we have some other pieces. So we have the sleeves, which are huge, definitely the biggest piece of this fabric besides the skirt, of course. So this is what they look like folded in half. So you can kind of like get an idea of that balloon sleeve. And it does have a cuff at the bottom. So it has that big balloon and then it cuffs. So it kind of looks something like that. And it's really, really dreamy. I love it. We also have the cuffs for the sleeves that I just mentioned, and then the whole front of the piece has bias binding, which if you're not familiar with bias binding, it's okay. There's a lot of different varieties out there, but a lot of patterns will have you just cut out a piece that is the same fabric as what you're working with, especially if it's visible from the outside, which this one is. So basically it's just a strip of fabric that needs to be ironed and you fold it kind of like a sandwich. And then what you do is you sew along one of the sides connecting to the fabric, and then you flip it and you enclose that raw edge. I will be doing this later so that you can see it, obviously, because that's a terrible explanation, but that's pretty much what it is. And also this pattern calls for interfacing. Now, I have purchased interfacing before, but it was a little bit different. This one's like stretchy. See, I don't know why or how this one is different, but it is. I've never used this specific kind. Mine is a little bit more papery than I've used before, a little bit more like fabric papery. This one feels like swimsuit material, but it does still have the glue on the back. So interfacing is just a piece of fabric that has glue on one side. And what this does is it stabilizes a piece of fabric so that it isn't so floppy and moving around all over the place. Because when you're trying to do something like bias binding, especially with a thin fabric, it's very helpful to stabilize the garment with something like interfacing. The last time I made this dress was the first time I ever used interfacing, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I'd never thought it was important until I just decided to try it since I had it sitting around. And it changed my life. It really did. It was incredible to work with. It made the bias binding so stiff and just way easier to work with, okay? So that is basically the tour of all the pattern pieces. Now I just have to start putting them together. I've already pinned this last night, so I'm like pretty prepared to just get going. So I'm just gonna sew up this bodice really quick and then get back to you when it comes to adding on the sleeves, because the sleeves is a little bit more of an intricate process, and I'm going to have to get out the instructions because I don't remember exactly how to attach them. It's not like incredible, but it's like pretty in line. So my background looks so different and this room feels so different to be in because I painted it white. I'm kind of showing the transformation of this room on this channel of how I'm kind of redoing it, even though I never really did anything with it. But if you're interested in that, just stay tuned, because the first step was to paint it. The second step will be to assemble this other shelf. My friend actually assembled this for me when he was in town, which was very nice. But I have one other one. This is from CB2, by the way, and I love it. It's like so wide. Oh my gosh, you know what? Last time I did this, I didn't even read the instructions. I just watched somebody's YouTube video. So I'm gonna do a little bit of inception and watch somebody's YouTube video. Perfect. I'll link the video down below that I watched. It's from the account Sewing Therapy, and I really liked their video. First thing I have to do is the gathers along the top and the bottom of the sleeves. So, oop, that's the skirt. Oh, here's my sleeves. Basically to sew gathers. Gathers are very fun. That's how you get like the ruffle effect. And what you do is you set your stitch length to as big as it'll go. I'm going to do 5.5 or, I'm gonna do 5.5. I don't wanna do too big. But with my old machine, it was like a little lever I would push, and now there's a button. Here I have the stitch length, and that will make it so that you can scrunch the fabric together. Okay, so when you're done stitching, I lift up my foot and I pull this out a little bit so that I have some length on that tail, and then I just use the razor on the side of my machine to cut it, or scissors if your machine doesn't have that. That's definitely a new feature for me to have that little razor on the side, which is cool. And as you can see, the fabric has already kind of started to bunch up on its own. So what you do is you tie off one of the sides. So you would tie off this side. My machine does that for me, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm just gonna grab one of the sides and I'm going to separate the two threads. I'm not gonna gather this right now, but I'm just gonna show you what you would do. So there's two strings. You have your top stitch and your bottom and your bobbin thread, and then you just pull this one, like hold on to it, and you scrunch the fabric just like that, and it creates a little ruffle. And I'm going to do the same thing to the top right here. Clearly my cutting is never super accurate, but it's fine. This never affects my actual finished garment, although I could be a little bit better about not being so sloppy. All right, then just repeat for the other side. I'm going to sew along the side of the sleeve. So this is the part that goes underneath your arm. So I'm gonna sew along that. And don't forget to reduce your stitch length back down to the normal stitch length. Sleeve sides are done. Now I think that we're going to do some attaching. Let's see what the instructions video tells me. All right, so the instructions say next to connect the bias binding for the sleeves together. And again, the bias binding, think of it as just the cuff. It's just the sleeve cuff to keep it all in and looking nice so that you're not seeing those raw edges. Now it's a circle, okay? So now we're going to take one of these and fold it in about right there and press that in so that it's flat. It's really hard to see because the pattern is a little, it looks pretty much the same on both sides. All right, the next thing that I need to do is gather the bottom of the sleeves so that I can attach the cuffs or the bias. I sewed that edge on, and now I flip it up, flip the sleeve inside out, and then it looks like this from the outside, which is pretty gross. But then here's the beauty of this bias tape. See, it's folded already. All I have to do is fold it down one more time and enclose all of those nasty edges, and that is a beautiful little sleeve. Well, sleeve cuff. We're not done with the sleeve yet, but the sleeve cuff. There is my cuff complete. So it'll just go on my arm like this. Ooh, it looks so good already. I love it. I love it. All right, friends, hope you're still with me. Now we have the task of adding the sleeves to the bodice, which is super fun. And you know, we're getting there. We're almost done with the bodice, and then we just do a little gathered skirt, and it's pretty simple. So what I watched the person do, whose tutorial I'm watching, is she laid it out like so, and then added on the sleeve. What I like to do is match up my pattern pieces at the seam allowances, and typically patterns have notches. This one definitely has notches, but I don't usually use the notches, honestly, because I find that I cut them too deep and then it makes a hole in my garment. So I just match up the seam allowance, and that usually works out just fine. Everything lines up. So it's whatever works for you, whatever makes your process easier and without holes, let's say. We have a bodice reveal. We're also losing sunlight. But this is actually going like pretty quickly, honestly. So, oh my gosh, it's so cute. You can't really tell what it is. Hold on, let me, whoa, sorry, I almost took you out. Let me just put this on. I love trying on my garments before they're done. I don't know why, I just like always do it because I get excited. Of course, this is going to be gathered here, but you can kind of see it shaping up. It looks so cute. I love it. Okay, next I think we need to do the bias, the binding, and then we're really cooking. Okay, let's check the video and see what's next. First, we need to connect the two binding pieces together. The reason that there's two pieces is so that you know where to sort of line them up on the back, because you're going to put the seam on the center back here. So I think that's why it's in two pieces, so it's just easier. And also so that both ends can have this like pointed edge. Wait, you can't even see that because I didn't trim the stuff. You might not even be able to really see it now, but there's a pointed edge right here. Next, we're going to do the same thing we did with the other bias and fold it like this and iron it. So I pinned the bias at the center back. So now I have to pin it all the way down the length of each front, because it is a wrap top. So the top is in two pieces right now, or rather like two sides. So once I have that pinned all the way to the bottom, I'm basically, well, hold on. I'm just gonna grab this and pin it at the bottom right now, because that will help me figure out how much of the sleeve part needs to be gathered so that it can lay flat underneath the bias. And again, if this is at all confusing, there are tons of tutorials on this dress. I think a lot of people have made it. So I'll link down below the video that I'm watching. I actually just watched her video. I didn't even read the instructions. It was that good and helpful. So I'll definitely link that down below if you want to see more visuals. But I've just figured I'd take you along on this little journey with me. If my explanation was terrible, you can now see the bias is this strap, and then this is what needs to be gathered. So that will be gathered until it lays flat against the bias, okay? There we go, gathered until it laid flat. And now I'm just going to pin it to hold that in place, because that is something that will try to come undone. All right, let's see how this went. Now you just fold this and it instantly looks cute. You can't even see the nasty anymore. Very good. Okay, so also something to note. Now, if you are wanting to add a label to your garment, this is the point in which you would do that. So I am going to grab one of my labels. Adding labels to my homemade clothes just makes them feel a little bit more not homemade, you know? So I have 4 sets of labels actually. And let me show them to you. They're all from Kylie and the Machine. I just love her. Awesome like company. She also does like jeans hardware. It's based out of Australia though, so there's a little bit of like the wait for shipping. But here's this one. This says this is the back, which is actually quite handy. Kind of funny, but I have to use that one a lot because, well, I don't have to use it, but like the label will indicate it's the back, but it's just funny that it says that. This one says perfectly imperfect. Then we have this one, which I'm gonna use on this project, circa 2021, and then handmade. So I've used this one quite a bit, but yeah, I'm gonna use the circa 2021 this time. But I'd like to put the circa 2021 on like all of my garments I make in 2021 just to, I don't know, document that. But not all of them are gonna be like on the neck. I might put them like on the side seam sometimes too. But this one is interesting because it has like a bunch of different types. This is the front. And then the back is just like a C. Okay, and then we have this like bar tack one, which just says circa 2020. Okay, so when I'm doing this bias binding, like flipping it, I'm gonna push the seam allowance up inside and then fold it and pin it. And where I'm gonna be putting the label, I need to make sure that I put the label there at this stage so that I don't have to like unpick anything and put it on later, which would be super annoying. We've officially lost like most of the sunlight. So I'm gonna end for the day there, but I just realized that I made a kind of funny mistake with the label. Honestly, I don't mind it, so I'm gonna leave it, but normally labels would go on the inside of your clothes, right? But I accidentally stitched it onto the back. But I kind of like it. Like I was imagining this as like regular bias tape adding a label, because normally bias tape gets folded to the inside, but this one, the bias tape is like obviously visible on the outside. So the top is all finished. Normally at this point, what you would do is figure out at what point you want it to overlap, and then you would sew the bottom of the bodice all together at that point. So I'm going to wait to do that until tomorrow because I'm supposed to be hanging out with a friend on the phone. We're gonna call each other. This is not a very accurate view of what it will look like, but you can see the sleeves look really cute. Very fluffy sleeves. Good evening again to my sewing friends. So it is the next day. Today was a crazy busy day. I was out running errands pretty much all day. So I am showered. I did a skincare routine. I did a face mask. My face feels so soft and refreshed, and I'm ready to hunch over my machine. While I was preparing to start filming again, I put on my little shirt, my little bodice, and I figured out where I needed to sew along the bottom so that it would cross over as much as I wanted. So I figured out that placement and then I pinned it, and now I'm just going to do a basting stitch around the whole edge or bottom edge. And basically a basting stitch is the same type of stitch as a gathering stitch. So it's just your longest stitch length. And that makes it so that if you need to remove that stitch later, it's easier. And it also just like helps keep things together, like keeps pieces together, usually when the stitch isn't permanent or it doesn't matter what it looks like or how strong it is. So this is one of those situations. So I'm gonna quickly do that basting stitch, and then we are going to gather the skirt, attach it, and hem it. I'm really excited. The end stages are always like so nice. I feel like with this garment, really the most work is the bodice, and I like working on the bodice of this dress a lot. So it's actually like a super fun process. This is my second time doing it, and actually my dog, while I was out today, he ripped up my pattern. So I am going to have to reprint it if I want to make it again, which really stinks because this pattern had a lot of pieces and that would really suck. Like lots of pages, I should say. Skirt pieces, it's 2 big rectangles, and all I have to do is sew up the side seams and then baste around the top so that I can do the gathering stitch. I have started to gather the skirt up, and now I just need to put it next to the bodice so I know how much I need to gather, because I don't want to gather too much or too little. So I always line it up with the bodice so that I know. You know what, before I do the bodice attachment, I think that I'm going to secure the sleeve seams, because I haven't done that yet, like zigzag them. I have a serger, but I hate using it. I'm just gonna be honest. So I usually just like zigzag things. So I'm gonna do that really quick. Got my gathered skirt here, and I just bunched up the bottom of this because I'm going to slip it inside of the skirt so that right sides are touching. I have put on the skirt backwards way too many times. So always make sure that right sides are touching. You're basically just putting the bodice inside of the skirt, okay? So what I'm gonna do is match up the side seams and then go from there. It's typically what I do to make sure that everything will line up in the end. Let's see how well I was able to pull this off. So the gathers were pretty even throughout. This might be one of my best gathering jobs in a while. I'm typically kind of, I've just done gathers so much that I can get a little sloppy with it. But, ooh, look, it looks nice. I really like it. Okay, so I'm already noticing that the front is like opening. So I think that I'm gonna have to do some sort of hand stitching right here to close that up, because I don't want this to be like an open wrap situation. But now I'm just gonna go around and clip any like thread that I see on the outside. And then what I normally do for the gathers, like on the inside, because this looks really sloppy, what I do is I trim it down and then I do a zigzag stitch over the trimmed part, and then it doesn't come apart or anything like that. So it's just like another way that you can secure your gathered pieces. Sometimes people will put like bias tape on it, which I considered doing. Like I kind of kept a little strip for that, but I don't think I'm gonna do it because it kind of adds a little bit of bulk. Here is the try on before I do the hem. And look, the cross, like the cross top is just kind of gaping a lot. I don't know why, but I can fix that by putting a stitch right here, a hand stitch. I feel like I didn't cross it over enough, or like, cause like it just like feels kind of loose, but it crosses over quite a bit. Like when I do this, you still can't see anything. So I'm kind of using my viewfinder as a camera, or a mirror, sorry. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna do a little stitch right there. I might actually just do like a blind stitch underneath where the bias binding is, but I did not like this, what is it called? Interfacing. I didn't like it at all. It's not very stiff. Like my other bias binding is so much more stiff and it was way easier to work with. When I hem it, it'll probably come up like an inch, and that'll be like the perfect length. It's so airy. Like this one is much lighter than my other one. My other one is made out of a sheet, so it's like a little bit more thick of cotton. This is a linen something blend, linen viscose blend. I don't remember, but it's not like full linen, but it's super light, super drapey. It looks really cute. I wish that I put in pockets. Like I'm already regretting that, but that's definitely something I can add in later, like cute inseam pockets. But anyway, all I have to do is hem it and it's done. And I'm going to go like run around my field tomorrow and show you, because it's dark already, but I really want to show you what it looks like with like wind in its tails, because oh my gosh, these sleeves are to die for. This is really cute. I do love it.